Welcome, dear subscribers and curious listeners of my channel. No matter how brilliant J.K. Rowling's vision was, attentive readers can't help but notice logical gaps, unanswered questions, and scenes that make you wonder, was this really well thought out? Sometimes magic appears where it shouldn't exist at all. Other times, characters ignore obvious solutions that are right under their noses. Today, we'll take a look back at the most striking plot inconsistencies across all 7 books. Enjoy the video. Number 1. Why didn't James and Lily become each other's secret keepers? When Lily and James Potter learned that Voldemort was hunting their son, they went into hiding in their cottage in Godric's Hollow. To protect themselves, they used the powerful Fidelius charm to conceal their location. So far, so good. But they chose Sirius Black as their secret keeper, and then abruptly changed their minds, entrusting Peter Pettigrew instead. But why involve anyone else at all? Why didn't James and Lily just become secret keepers for each other? Lily would know where James was, James where Lily was, and no one else would be at risk. What was the point of bringing a third party into it? This unexplained gap continues to baffle fans. Number 2. Did the Hogwarts professors forget about Alohomora? In the 3rd book, Sirius Black escapes Azkaban and infiltrates Hogwarts. The school reacts swiftly, increased security, locked doors, hidden students. But wait, what about the Alohomora charm? Hermione learned it in her first year. Wouldn't it can unlock almost any door? Are we to believe that a grown wizard like Sirius Black wouldn't know it too? If doors can be opened with the simplest spell, why all the dramatic lockdown measures? The inconsistency is hard to ignore. Number 3. The Troll and the Slytherin students. Halloween, first year. Professor Quirrell bursts into the Great Hall, shouting, "Troll in the dungeon!" Chaos erupts. Professors act quickly and send students to their common rooms. Makes sense, right? Except for one small problem. The Slytherin common room is located in the dungeons. That's right. The students were sent directly toward the troll. A catastrophic decision, especially considering that other houses have common rooms located far from the danger, a lapse in judgment by the professors, a script oversight, or was Dumbledore simply trusting fate? Either way, it's a strange scene, no matter how you look at it. Number 4. Why was Ron allowed to use a broken wand after the flying Ford Anglia crashes into the Whomping Willow? Ron's wand breaks, but no one replaces it. He spends the entire school year using a dangerous, malfunctioning wand that shoots off random spells and explosions. That's not just inconvenient, it's downright hazardous. Isn't the school supposed to care about student safety, especially after the broken wand backfired and nearly killed Lockhart during a botched memory spell? Why didn't anyone give Ron a temporary wand, or at least forbid him from using the broken one? Number 5. The price of wands. One wand costs 7 galleons. Sounds reasonable, until you remember that Mr. Ollivander uses some of the rarest magical materials: phoenix feathers, dragon heartstrings, unicorn hair. For example, according to Horace Slughorn, a single strand of unicorn hair is worth 10 galleons, already more than the wand itself. So how does his business survive? Why is he selling powerful artifacts below cost? Is Ollivander just a saintly craftsman, or is he secretly subsidized by the Ministry of Magic? We never find out, and that's a shame. Number 6. Timeline issues. September 1st. Everyone boards the Hogwarts Express. Classes begin on the 2nd, and oddly enough, it's always a Monday. It looks tidy until you check the calendar. According to the books, Harry attends Hogwarts for 6 years, and each time the school year starts on a Monday. But from 1991 to 1997, September 2nd actually fell on different weekdays. Weird? Absolutely. In the Philosopher's Stone, it's mentioned that Harry's birthday, July 31st, 1991, was a Tuesday, but it was actually a Wednesday. Sure, wizards can manipulate time, but would they really waste it just to sync the academic calendar? Number 7. Why didn't Dumbledore use the time turner against Voldemort? Hermione used the time turner to be in 2 places at once. She twisted time like a ribbon, attending divination and arithmancy in the same hour. In the climax of Prisoner of Azkaban, she and Harry travelled back 3 hours to save both Buckbeak and Sirius Black. Dumbledore himself hinted at the plan, saying softly, "You must not be seen." He trusted time travel with 2 13-year-olds, but never used it himself in the war against Voldemort. Why? Dumbledore knew the stakes. He knew the timeline. He could have gone back to the First Wizarding War, warned the Potters, unmasked Barty Crouch Jr., or even destroyed a young Tom Riddle before he ever made a Horcrux. But instead he chose inaction. The Time-Turners, we're later told, were all destroyed during the battle in the Department of Mysteries. A convenient line, but if even one had survived, and clearly one had, why wasn't it used? Dumbledore moved through time like a chess master, but left the most powerful piece untouched, and no one asked why. Number 8. How did the Weasley twins not notice Peter Pettigrew on the Marauders map? Fred and George Weasley were not careless. They spent years sneaking through corridors, dodging Filch, and pranking classmates, all with the Marauders map in hand. They knew its magic. They trusted it. But somehow, in all that time, they never noticed a man named Peter Pettigrew sleeping next to their brother. On the map, it wasn't labelled Scabbers. It was Peter. A name that should have sent shivers down their spines, especially since, according to the history books, Peter Pettigrew had been dead for over a decade. When Harry first saw the name, he asked, why would Pettigrew be sleeping with Ron? The map showed the truth with quiet clarity, but Fred and George, who joked about Percy's secret meetings and watched the halls like hawks, missed it. Did they never glance at Ron's dormitory? Never see that odd extra name walking beside him? It feels less like a blind spot and more like a narrative patch. One of the most powerful magical tools in the series revealed the truth in seconds, only when the plot needed it to. Number 9. Why did no one help Harry during the Triwizard Tournament? Harry never asked to compete. His name was forced into the goblet. Everyone knew it. Dumbledore knew it. McGonagall knew it. Even Moody, fake as he was, knew it. Yet the answer was always the same. The contract is binding. As if a cursed artifact held more power than the well-being of a 14-year-old boy, no teacher ever stood up to say, let's prepare him properly. Instead, they watched from the sidelines while he faced dragons, mermaids, and a deadly maze. The rules didn't forbid help. In fact, Fleur and Crumb received guidance from their headmasters. Cedric, too, got hints from Hufflepuff staff. But Harry? Dumbledore stayed silent. McGonagall offered no training. Snape, as always, sneered. Only fake Moody stepped in, with tips carefully crafted to steer Harry toward Voldemort. In Goblet of Fire, Dumbledore says, we must all face the choice between what is right and what is easy. But when the moment came, he chose neither. He chose to wait. And Harry nearly died for it. Not once, but again and again. He summoned a broom against a dragon only because Cedric gave him a clue. He solved the second task thanks to Dobby and Gillyweed, information that should have come from a teacher, not a house elf. In the maze, he fought curses alone, while adults watched the hedges grow taller. A school that claimed to protect its students sent one to die in a graveyard and called it tradition. Number 10, why don't wizards use Muggle technology? Mr. Weasley loved Muggle gadgets. He once asked Harry, eyes shining, what exactly is the function of a rubber duck? But beyond that fascination, the wizarding world seemed trapped in a kind of magical stubbornness. No telephones, no radios, except for secret pirate broadcasts, no electricity. Letters were sent by owl, a method that looked romantic but collapsed the moment urgency mattered. When Harry needed help in Order of the Phoenix, he didn't use a phone. He sent a message through fire. And when that failed, he flew on a thestral. It makes no sense. Wizards had entire departments for misused Muggle artifacts, but not a single one dedicated to adapting Muggle innovations, not even when lives were at stake. Couldn't Dumbledore install a landline in Grimmauld Place? Couldn't Kingsley Shacklebolt use a mobile phone while hunting Death Eaters? Hermione, raised by Muggles, never once mentioned email. Yet during the Battle of Hogwarts, information had to be passed in person, or not at all. In a world with flying brooms and time travel, they still couldn't send a simple text. The refusal to evolve cost them. When Voldemort took over the Ministry, the Order was left blind. Owls could be intercepted, flu networks monitored. A single hacked Muggle walkie-talkie might have changed the game, but magic treated technology like a disease, something dirty, lesser, unworthy. The magical world hid from the Muggle one and missed the tools that could have saved it. In the end, the wands stayed powerful. But the world around them had already moved on. Number 11. Why weren't memories used to prove the innocence of the falsely accused? The pensive shows the past, not as memory but as truth, vivid, untampered, and absolute. Dumbledore used it to examine Barty Crouch Jr.'s crimes. Harry dove into Snape's memories and uncovered years of sacrifice. So why wasn't this tool used in courtrooms? Why did no one summon a witness, extract their memory, and lay it bare for all to see? The magical world has the equivalent of a perfect video recording, yet innocent people still went to Azkaban and no one blinked. Take Sirius Black. Framed by Peter Pettigrew, Sirius was imprisoned without a trial, no hearing, no defense, no chance to say, "I saw him fake his own death," or "he betrayed James and Lily." If even one Auror had watched a memory from Remus Lupin, or even questioned Dumbledore, the truth could have been uncovered. But instead, Sirius spent 12 years locked away with Dementors. The books never mention a court asking for memories. The Ministry didn't care. Guilt was assumed. The system, if it even existed, failed entirely. The hypocrisy cuts deeper when you remember how often memories were used outside the law. Dumbledore pulled them from Slughorn. Snape gave them to Harry. Harry even used them to understand Voldemort. But when justice was at stake, the wizarding world looked the other way. A world with truth stored in vials still allowed lies to decide fates, and the ones who suffered, Sirius, Hagrid, Stan Shunpike, were left with scars no pensive could erase. Number 12. Why didn't Hermione place magical protection on her parents? Hermione stood in her parents' living room, wand trembling, voice steady. She whispered, "Obliviate," and with that, erased everything they knew of her. They became Wendell and Monica Wilkins, two dentists bound for a quiet life in Australia. It was meant as an act of love. But something about it doesn't sit right. Hermione Granger, the girl who read 12 books before breakfast, surely knew other ways. If Dumbledore could hide the Potters with the Fidelius charm, why couldn't she do the same? She was one of the brightest witches of her age. She understood the magic behind protective enchantments. The Fidelius charm is ancient, powerful, and proven. Sirius Black used it, Bill and Fleur used it. Even the Weasleys used it for Aunt Muriel's house. So why didn't Hermione? Why not make a friend the secret keeper and shield her parents completely? Why not ask Professor McGonagall or Kingsley to help? Instead, she wiped their memories, knowing full well that magical memory tampering, if flawed, could cause irreversible damage. It's even stranger considering how cautious Hermione was with everyone else. She placed undetectable extension charms on her handbag, set protective enchantments around their campsites, carried an enchanted portrait of Phineas Nigellus to track enemy movement. She planned for every disaster but chose the bluntest solution for the two people she loved most. She never even tried to get them back after the war, not in the books, not in the films. It's as if the story simply forgot they existed. And what about the others? If Hermione mastered such powerful defensive magic, why didn't she teach it to Harry or Ron? Why not show the entire Order? A single class on the Fidelius charm could have saved countless lives. The burrow could have been hidden. Luna's house, Dean Thomas's family. Instead, they went into hiding like fugitives, while Hermione's greatest magical act stayed a lonely secret. Her silence, in hindsight, feels less like protection and more like isolation. and it's never questioned. Not once. Number 13. Why was Percy Weasley accepted back into the family so easily? Percy Weasley turned his back on everything his family stood for. In Order of the Phoenix, he sided with the Ministry, dismissing his own father as a fool and calling Dumbledore dangerous. He went so far as to send Ron a letter warning him not to follow Harry, writing, "I hope very much that you will not allow yourself to become mixed up in the affairs of wizards who are, frankly, dangerous crackpots." That was his own brother. In one letter, Percy chose career over blood. Yet in Deathly Hallows, Percy appears during the Battle of Hogwarts like nothing happened. There is no real apology, no heartfelt scene where he speaks with Molly, no confrontation with Arthur. He simply walks in and begins fighting beside the family he abandoned. The closest thing to reconciliation comes in a brief line. "Did I hear someone else?" said George. "Yep," said Percy, stepping forward. "And I've brought the Minister of Magic himself." That's it. Years of tension vanish in a moment that should have been thunderous but barely whispers. This return feels hollow. Percy's betrayal wasn't minor. It was public, deliberate, and deeply personal. He wasn't under a spell or misled. He made a conscious choice. When Fred dies just a few pages later, the reader is left aching. There's no moment of forgiveness, no time to heal. Fred's last interaction with Percy is battle, not brotherhood. That silence between them is deafening. The story missed a rare chance for raw emotion. A scene with Molly weeping, Arthur forgiving, or even Percy begging for another chance could have been unforgettable. Instead, the arc simply collapses. Percy is back. And no one asks why. In a book full of earned resolutions, his feels like a door left ajar and forgotten. Number 14. Why doesn't the Ministry of Magic use magical lie detectors? In the wizarding world, where truth can be extracted with a potion and lies unravelled through a flick of a wand, the persistence of judicial error in the Ministry of Magic feels more than negligent. It feels deliberate. Sirius Black, for instance, was cast into Azkaban without trial, based on nothing more than circumstantial evidence and a public thirst for swift justice. The betrayal of 13 Muggles, the murder of Peter Pettigrew, the supposed alliance with Voldemort, all accepted without question. No veritaserum, no pensiev, no thorough interrogation, just a hasty decision made in fear. And Sirius, innocent, languished in that soul-sucking prison for 12 long years. Even when the stakes are high and truth is vital, the Ministry often avoids the tools that could deliver clarity. One of the most glaring examples is the case of Stan Shunpike, the young conductor of the night bus. Arrested during Voldemort's rise to power, Stan became a scapegoat, a public show of strength by the Ministry under Scrimgeour's command. There was no evidence, no crime, and certainly no trial worthy of the name. A simple veritaserum test could have cleared Stan in minutes. Instead, he was sent to Azkaban, a pawn in a political game. It wasn't about justice, it was about appearances. This pattern of willful ignorance is haunting. Rubeus Hagrid, expelled from Hogwarts at the age of 13, was later imprisoned in Azkaban after the opening of the Chamber of Secrets in Harry's second year. Once again, no magical methods were used to verify the truth. Dumbledore himself said, "You will find that I will only truly have left this school when none here are loyal to me. You will also find that help will always be given at Hogwarts to those who ask for it." But what use was loyalty when Hagrid's innocence could have been demonstrated by examining his memories or administering veritaserum? Igor Karkaroff, a former Death Eater, offered names to escape a life sentence in Azkaban. But how could anyone verify his claims without seeing the memories that accompanied them? His testimony led to arrests, but the validity of his words was taken at face value, even when he had every incentive to manipulate the truth. Again, no pensive, no confirmation. The entire judicial process at the Ministry seems bizarrely reliant on trust in a world where magic makes truth provable. Hermione Granger, a first-year student, instinctively applied stricter standards to truth than the entire ministry. When confronted with a mystery involving the Sorcerer's Stone, she researched, confirmed, and validated every clue. She even questioned accepted sources. In Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, she tells Harry and Ron, "I checked this out weeks ago from the library." Her reliance on verified information became a defining trait. She never trusted speculation when she could find proof. Why then doesn't the ministry follow that same logic? The use of veritaserum is rare in the series and always surrounded by regulation or suspicion. In Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, Professor Snape mentions it briefly, saying, 3 drops of this and you will spill your innermost secrets. Yet even when Barty Crouch Jr. is captured, the truth is only revealed because Dumbledore, not the ministry, administers veritaserum. The ministry does not initiate the questioning. In fact, they are complicit in the cover-up of Crouch Jr.'s escape from Azkaban. Again, truth is not a priority, control is. During the trial of Harry Potter in the Order of the Phoenix, the absurdity reaches new heights. A full Wizengamot trial is convened simply because Harry used a Patronus charm to protect himself and his cousin from Dementors. Fudge attempts to expel him from Hogwarts, citing underage magic. Despite Dumbledore's presence, no one uses veritaserum to verify Harry's account. No one consults the memory of Arabella Figg, the witness. She is brought in, disbelieved, and dismissed. The law clearly states that magic may be used before Muggles in life-threatening situations, Dumbledore asserts, but the law doesn't seem to matter. The trial is political. Truth is irrelevant. One must wonder if the ministry fears the very tools that could keep it honest. A pensive reveals truth, but it also exposes bias, misconduct, and hidden motivations. Veritaserum compels honesty, but it could just as easily uncover corruption at the top. If Minister for Magic Cornelius Fudge or his successor Scrimgeour had submitted to such scrutiny, what might have been revealed about their motivations, their alliances, their willingness to sacrifice justice for power? The wizarding world, for all its enchantments, remains deeply flawed. Magical technology, if one may call it that, exists to prevent falsehood, but is rarely used where it matters most. The pensieve, as Dumbledore demonstrates, can replay unfiltered memories. In The Half-Blood Prince, Harry watches Tom Riddle's past with chilling clarity. This memory is everything, Dumbledore tells him. But in a courtroom setting, these tools are absent. Is it bureaucracy, fear of public backlash, or is the truth simply too dangerous? Consider Marietta Edgecombe, the girl who betrayed Dumbledore's army. She was coerced by her mother, a ministry official, to report the illegal student group. She betrayed her friends and earned a face full of pustules as a result. But what if she had been asked to testify? Could a memory spell have proven coercion? Could veritaserum have shown her regret? Instead, she is shamed and disappears from the narrative, her truth untold. There is no protocol for justice in such cases, only silence. The case of Barty Crouch Jr. further reveals the ministry's inability to handle truth. For years, Crouch Jr. lived disguised as Mad-Eye Moody, manipulating events during the Triwizard Tournament. It wasn't until the very end, when the real Moody was freed, that the truth emerged. Crouch Sr. had orchestrated his son's escape from prison and then covered it up. What if someone had simply checked Barty Jr.'s memories? What if the Polyjuice disguise had been subjected to magical verification? The whole disaster could have been prevented, but again, no one bothered. The ministry moves reactively, not preventively. Number 15. Why didn't the Marauders realize Peter had betrayed them if they were animagi? In the last trembling months of the First Wizarding War, the Marauders stood on a precipice. Fear gripped the wizarding world. Betrayals fractured friendships. The name Voldemort was whispered in dread. And in the eye of this storm, James Potter, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew, the inseparable Marauders of Hogwarts, found themselves divided by shadows. They had spent their school years mastering secrets, laughing at rules, and transforming into animals for the sake of brotherhood. But the very magic that once bound them now raises a question that echoes like a ghostly howler through time. Why, with all their powers as unregistered animagi, did they not uncover Peter Pettigrew's treachery? James, Sirius, and Peter shared a secret that could have easily become their weapon against the encroaching darkness. While Remus struggled under the weight of his monthly transformations, the others had risked everything to become animagi. James, the proud stagprongs, Sirius, the reckless black dog Padfoot, and Peter, the meek rat Wormtail. This was not idle magic. Becoming an animagus required dangerous, advanced spellwork, something even adults rarely attempted, but they had done it in their youth, out of love for Remus and thirst for adventure. Now, with Voldemort hunting them and a spy betraying the Order of the Phoenix, their ability to transform into unnoticed creatures could have served a darker, more pragmatic purpose. Sirius Black in particular was never one to take betrayal lightly. From the start he suspected there was a traitor among their ranks. The books confirm his suspicion. "I thought it was Remus," he confesses years later, broken and gaunt in Azkaban. "I thought he was the spy." But if he had such fears, why didn't he follow them through? As Padfoot, he could have easily shadowed his friends. A large black dog might attract attention in Diagon Alley, but in the back alleys and shadows of the wizarding world, Sirius could move unseen. He could have watched Peter's every step. Yet he didn't. He miscalculated, and that miscalculation cost James and Lily their lives. The decision to switch secret keepers was made in secrecy and haste. Sirius had offered to be the secret keeper for the Fidelius charm that would protect the Potters, but fearing he was the obvious choice, someone Voldemort would surely target, he proposed Peter instead, assuming no one would ever suspect him. "I convinced them to use Peter instead," Sirius tells Harry years later. "I thought it was the perfect plan, a bluff. It was a fatal error in judgment, one born of cunning but not of insight." Sirius did not anticipate that Peter was already in the Dark Lord's hands, already whispering secrets in exchange for survival. James Potter, ever loyal, never doubted his friends. His faith in them was total, unshakable. He had no reason to question Peter's loyalty. After all, they had known each other since their first year at Hogwarts. James had defended Peter against bullies, included him in every prank, and even trusted him with his greatest secret, his son's safety. Yet James was also the most capable of the three. As Prongs, a powerful stag, he could have quietly patrolled the areas Peter frequented. He could have watched, listened, and waited. But he didn't. Perhaps he was blinded by trust, or perhaps by fear that suspecting one of their own would shatter the fragile unity they had left. Remus Lupin, the outlier among them, was not an animagus, but he was a natural observer. Though not privy to the Fidelius decision until later, he was wary during those final days. "I was suspicious," he says in The Prisoner of Azkaban, "but I thought it was Sirius. He seemed so tense, so edgy." Yet even Remus, with all his intuition and quiet intelligence, never turned his suspicions on Peter. He saw the rat, but not the traitor. It is a painful irony that Peter's strength lay in his weakness. No one feared him. No one watched him. And so Peter moved freely, unnoticed. As Wormtail, he was small, forgettable, able to slip into shadows and under doors. He could have easily attended secret Death Eater meetings without raising alarms. While Sirius might have been followed had he disappeared too often, no one tracked Peter. His animalgus form was, in essence, the perfect disguise. He used it not for friendship, as in the old days, but for espionage. It is likely that he began betraying the Order long before the final months, perhaps even before the Fidelius charm. And yet, none of them followed him. None of them transformed, stalked, or questioned. their greatest strength transforming unseen, remained unused. One must consider the nature of war. In war, even the closest friendships are tested. And yet the Marauders had a blind spot. They never considered that the weakest among them might also be the most dangerous. Sirius and James could not imagine Peter choosing Voldemort, not after all they had been through, but Peter had been cornered. He was scared, Remus later tells Harry, scared that Voldemort would kill him, which of course he would have. Peter chose survival. He betrayed his friends because he believed he had no other choice. But what remains haunting is how easily he did it, and how thoroughly he fooled them all. There is one moment in the books that stands out, a clue that perhaps on some level Sirius had tried to act. When Harry sees him for the first time in The Prisoner of Azkaban, he is described as mad, obsessed, driven by revenge. "He's at Hogwarts," Sirius mutters. "He's at Hogwarts, and I'm going to get him." This is not a man who just discovered the betrayal. It is a man who has been living with the guilt of not acting when it mattered. It is plausible that Sirius, in the final days, began to suspect Peter, but by then it was too late. Number 16. Why did Hermione trust Rita Skeeter? In the flickering candlelight of the Gryffindor common room, Hermione Granger stared at a copy of the Daily Prophet, her brow furrowed with frustration. The headlines screamed falsities, claims that Harry was delusional, that Dumbledore was growing senile. Even worse, the wizarding world seemed to believe them. The Ministry had its claws deep in the press, and truth had been replaced with carefully manufactured denial. For Hermione, the realization was chilling. She had always trusted in institutions, in order, in logic. But now she understood the rules of the game had changed. If the truth was to be heard, she would have to outmaneuver the system, and for that she would need Rita Skeeter. This wasn't a decision Hermione made lightly. Rita had, after all, labelled her a Scarlet Woman and cast aspersions on her relationships in the Daily Prophet. Hermione had once called her Poison Pen, and she had every reason to feel that way. Rita had tormented Hagrid, exposing his giant heritage with the subtlety of a vulture picking at bones. She had misrepresented Harry, painted Dumbledore in unflattering light, and revelled in the scandal of other people's lives. But Hermione was not acting out of emotion. She was playing a long game, and Skeeter, unethical, dangerous, yet undeniably talented, was a tool too sharp to ignore. The scene that unfolded in the Order of the Phoenix was not one of surrender, but of calculated control. When Hermione arranged for Harry's story to be published in The Quibbler, she deliberately invited Skeeter back into the circle, but only under strict terms. The journalist was not a free agent anymore. Hermione had discovered Skeeter's illegal animagus secret, a beetle that lurked unseen during private moments, and had trapped her in a glass jar for months the year before. With that knowledge, Hermione had Skeeter under her thumb. She wasn't extending trust, she was enforcing obedience. Still the question remains, why not bypass Skeeter entirely? Xenophilius Lovegood, the eccentric editor of The Quibbler, was already sympathetic to Harry. His daughter Luna, a classmate of theirs, was staunchly supportive and brave in her own strange way. Why involve a known liar when a willing ally was available? Because Hermione understood something essential. Truth on its own is not enough. It needs to be packaged in a way people will actually read. And Rita Skeeter, for all her failings, knew how to sell a story. Hermione's own words in Chapter 25 of The Order of the Phoenix make this clear. We need someone who people will read, someone they'll listen to. Rita, ironically, was the very voice the establishment had once used to manipulate the public. By turning that voice against them, Hermione was fighting fire with fire. It was not an emotional decision, but a strategic one. She knew that people who dismissed the Quibbler as a joke might still pause if the article was written with Skeeter's venomous flair. Even so, the decision was morally complicated. Skeeter wasn't rehabilitated, she was merely restrained. And Hermione, who usually held her principles high above pragmatism, was making a rare exception. This wasn't just about getting the truth out, it was about how to make the wizarding world believe it. Hermione couldn't afford idealism. Voldemort had returned. Cedric Diggory was dead. The Ministry was orchestrating a campaign of silence. The stakes were too high to gamble on subtlety. Her plan had layers. By publishing in The Quibbler, a magazine known for its absurdity, the article was paradoxically protected. The Ministry couldn't easily censor it without drawing attention to it. And the author, Skeeter, still held public recognition. The combination was bizarre but potent, a tabloid writing a true story, packaged like gossip but burning with truth. It was subversion at its finest. Hermione had weaponized the very machinery that once humiliated her. She knew, too, that writing the article herself wouldn't work. Hermione was brilliant, but she lacked Skeeter's flair for sensationalism. A dry recounting of facts wouldn't sway a society in denial. The wizarding world wasn't ready for Dumbledore's calm warnings or Harry's emotional testimony. They needed drama, scandal, outrage. They needed the exact sort of storytelling Rita Skeeter excelled at. Hermione's move was an admission, not of trust, but of necessity. There's also the psychological manipulation at play. Hermione didn't just blackmail Skeeter, she baited her. She gave the journalist a story too tantalizing to resist. The return of the Dark Lord from the lips of the only known survivor of his killing curse was irresistible, and Hermione made sure Skeeter knew this would be her exclusive. It was a devil's bargain. Skeeter could reclaim her audience and relevance, but only on Hermione's terms. It's easy to forget how young Hermione was, just 15, and yet her grasp of political strategy, media influence and moral compromise reveals an intellect far beyond her years. This wasn't a reckless gamble, it was a chess move made in desperation. She recognized that the rules had changed, and if they were to survive, they had to adapt. Using Skeeter was dirty work, but sometimes the truth has to be dragged through mud to reach the light. Hermione's control extended even to the details of the article. She personally supervised the interview with Harry, making sure the facts were presented clearly. The article was framed as a personal account, not an editorial, not a political accusation, but a testimony. This was no accident. Hermione knew that raw personal truth would resonate more than abstract warnings. The article, published in the February issue of The Quibbler, immediately stirred the underground resistance. Students passed copies under desks. Adults began to whisper again. It was a crack in the dam. And Skeeter's voice lent the article a kind of taboo credibility. It was the ultimate irony, the Ministry's own attack dog now turned against them. By having Skeeter pen the story, Hermione blurred the lines between propaganda and truth. Readers weren't sure if they were being manipulated, but they were reading. And that was the point. In the world of public opinion, ambiguity can be a weapon. Number 17, why can't Horcruxes simply be destroyed with the Avada Kedavra curse? Of all the spells in the wizarding world, few command as much fear and finality as the killing curse. Avada Kedavra, green lightning, death incarnate, requires no wound, no weapon, no warning. It reduces life to silence in a heartbeat. And yet, when faced with the daunting task of destroying Voldemort's Horcruxes, not once do Harry Potter or his allies consider using the most lethal spell known to wizardkind. They seek basilisk venom, enchanted blades, and ancient relics, even risking their lives to obtain them. This absence of Avada Kedavra from their arsenal is not an oversight. It's a reflection of deeper magical laws, rules of soul, will, and the nature of evil. Horcrux is not merely a cursed object. It is a container for a torn soul, a fragment of life unnaturally bound to the physical world. The process to create it is monstrous. One must commit murder, the most violent rupture of soul imaginable. Once done, the sliver of soul is forced into a vessel, a ring, a diary, a locket, by unknown dark magic. Horace Slughorn, who gave Tom Riddle the key information, described the act in hushed tones, calling it the darkest of magic. Its strength lies not in its spellwork alone, but in the unnatural permanence of the soul it protects. This is why Avada Kedavra is powerless against it. The killing curse is designed to snuff out life, to extinguish the flame of a soul tethered to a living body. But Horcruxes contain no living creature. There is no heartbeat to stop, no breath to steal. They are not alive in the traditional sense. To strike a Horcrux with Avada Kedavra would be like trying to kill a memory with a blade. The curse may glance off or strike with no more effect than a sigh in the wind. When Harry first destroys a Horcrux, Tom Riddle's diary, he does not use a spell at all. He plunges the basilisk fang straight through the book, and ink gushed from the pages as though it was bleeding, followed by a scream from the soul trapped within. This scream, this violent severing, suggests a level of pain and damage far beyond what Avada Kedavra might inflict. J.K. Rowling describes the destruction with visceral clarity. The soul fragment did not merely vanish, it died a death filled with agony. Later, Ron destroys the locket Horcrux using the sword of Gryffindor, which had absorbed basilisk venom from the events in the Chamber of Secrets. The locket fights back. It attacks Ron's insecurities, torments him with visions. Even as a mere object, the Horcrux retains a twisted will. Its destruction is not as simple as smashing it. It must be overpowered, its essence obliterated. The sword does what Avada Kedavra cannot. It penetrates the unnatural protection of the soul, not by death, but by purification through a magical toxin potent enough to override the defenses. The killing curse is not a destructive spell in the sense of breaking objects. Its purpose is singular, to kill. It bypasses defenses, ignores shields, and does not cause physical damage unless the target is living. Moody explains in Goblet of Fire that there's no counter-curse, there's no blocking it. But that is because its magic is tailored to life itself. Throw it at a wall, and nothing happens. Hurl it at a rock, and the rock remains. Cast it at a Horcrux, and you aim death at something already undead. There is also the nature of intent. The unforgivable curses require the caster to mean them deeply. When Bellatrix Lestrange taught Harry about the Cruciatus curse in the Department of Mysteries, she sneered, "You have to mean it, Potter." Avada Kedavra demands even more, pure, unrelenting intent to kill. But how does one form such intent against an object, against a teacup, a stone, a diadem? The very psychology of the curse rejects the notion of inanimate targets. It would flicker and die before reaching its mark. Even Voldemort himself, the master of dark arts, the creator of the Horcruxes, does not rely on Avada Kedavra to protect or affect them. He surrounds them with enchantments, curses, traps, and protective spells. The locket is hidden in a lake surrounded by inferi. The cup is buried deep in the Lestrange vault, guarded by replication curses. The ring is cursed with a slow-acting fatal hex. None of these include the killing curse. He too knew that Avada Kedavra held no relevance to the preservation or destruction of his soul fragments. Dumbledore, the most brilliant wizard of his age, destroys the ring Horcrux with the sword of Gryffindor, not Avada Kedavra. Yet he also suffers in the process, as the curse within the ring seeps into his body and begins its deadly spread. Had Avada Kedavra been an option, he surely would have used it. But Dumbledore understands the ancient magics at play. He tells Harry in Half-Blood Prince that the Horcrux was extraordinarily well protected. He does not even mention Avada Kedavra as a possibility. It is beneath consideration not because it is weak, but because it is wrong. The tale of the Diadem Horcrux is another example. It lies hidden in the Room of Requirement, where it is eventually destroyed not by spellwork, but by fire. Magical fiend fire conjured by Crabbe. This fire, uncontrollable and alive in its own fury, is one of the few forces powerful enough to destroy a Horcrux, but it is also indiscriminate and deadly. The very fact that this dangerous fire succeeds while all other spells fail further emphasizes the nature of destruction a Horcrux requires. You do not kill a Horcrux, you annihilate it. A closer look at the snake Nagini, also a Horcrux, reinforces the same truth. She is a living creature, and so the killing curse could theoretically affect her. But even then, Voldemort never allows her to stray far, protecting her inside a magical barrier as seen during the Battle of Hogwarts. Her death comes not by spell, but by the enchanted blade once again, Neville's stroke with the sword of Gryffindor. The venom within the sword, the same which killed the diary and the locket, proves to be the true death sentence. In Deathly Hallows, when Harry enters the forest to die, a part of Voldemort's soul, the unintended Horcrux, resides within him. Voldemort casts Avada Kedavra, and the fragment is destroyed. But it takes the full power of the original caster, the same who split the soul, to sever it. This is not merely a case of spell versus object, but the culmination of magical law. Only Voldemort could have destroyed that piece with intent and power born of the same magic that made it. Even then, he does not know he has done so. Rowling leaves little doubt that Horcruxes lie outside the reach of common magic. They are immune not because of their physical composition, but because of what they contain, a soul fragment violently torn, unnaturally tethered, and magically defended. The path to their destruction is not paved by death alone, but by ruin, corruption, and anti-life forces. Basilisk venom, fiend fire, and the power of magical weapons imbued with deep history. Some may say the lack of Avada Kedavra was a narrative choice, a way to stretch the journey and deepen the stakes. But within the world, the magic supports it. Avada Kedavra is the spell of death. Horcruxes are the defiance of death. What is created by denying death cannot be unmade by invoking it. That paradox is the very foundation of Voldemort's downfall. His refusal to accept death led him to magics that only life, with all its pain and courage, could undo. Even when Harry faces Voldemort in their final duel, he never uses Avada Kedavra. He disarms, he deflects, he defeats through understanding and sacrifice. The Elder Wand, recognizing its true master, turns on Voldemort, the curse rebounds, and Voldemort dies by his own hand. The moral echo is powerful. Death begets death, but true victory lies elsewhere. Thus, Avada Kedavra remains what it is, a spell of swift ending. But Horcruxes are not about endings. They are about denial, prolongation, and perversion. Their destruction requires a deeper wound, a kind of magical trauma that restores the natural order. The fact that such destruction is difficult is not a flaw in logic, but a lesson in magic, and perhaps in morality. So when Hermione Granger carries the locket across wild moors, trembling under its influence, or when Ron faces the dark vision within it, or when Dumbledore's blackened hand reminds us of the cost of contact, we understand why no one muttered 2 words and moved on. To kill a Horcrux is to confront the deepest sins of magic, not to wave a wand and hope for silence. Avada Kedavra is a shortcut. Horcruxes demand reckoning. That is why Harry, Ron, and Hermione, young, untrained, often afraid, still succeed. They do not seek the easy path. They face the impossible and win, not by overpowering death, but by accepting it. And in that they become stronger than the spell that would have killed them. Number 18. How did Hermione repair her wand? During the chaos of the Battle of Hogwarts, amid spells flying and walls crumbling, Hermione Granger's wand was shattered. It is a brief but powerful moment, almost swallowed in the intensity of the narrative. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Rowling notes the moment simply. Hermione screamed as Bellatrix's curse sliced the air. Her wand flew out of her hand and broke as it struck the ground. That's all. There is no grand farewell for the wand that had been Hermione's companion since her very first trip to Diagon Alley. No dramatic pause, no lamentation, and yet what was lost in that instant was more than just a magical tool. It was a part of Hermione's identity. The broken wand was made of vine wood, with a dragon heartstring core 10 3/4 inches and quite rigid. Ollivander had chosen it for her when she was only 11. This wand was with her when she petrified McLagan's ego, mastered the Protean charm, and rewrote the rules of time itself. But then Bellatrix Lestrange's fury destroyed it. In the aftermath of the war, when peace began to settle like morning fog over the ruins of Hogwarts, Harry famously used the Elder Wand to repair his own. He took out his own wand, broke as it had been by Hermione's errant blasting curse, and said, "Reparo." A red gold light issued from the Elder Wand's tip, and his own wand sealed, good as new. And here begins the mystery. Nowhere in the book is there mention of Hermione's wand being repaired. Not by the Elder Wand, not by a replacement wand, not by any spell or specialist. And yet, in every subsequent account, in every fan theory, in every word J.K. Rowling spoke afterward, Hermione is simply assumed to have continued using her wand. The question lingers, how? Was it repaired off-page? Did she buy a new one? Did she secretly perform a forbidden charm? Rowling never says. Hermione's wand had been more than wood and core. Like all wands, it had developed a deep bond with its owner. Ollivander himself explains in The Sorcerer's Stone, the wand chooses the wizard. It's not always clear why. Over the years, Hermione's wand had clearly chosen her again and again. It responded to her logic, her discipline, her fierce will. To lose such a wand would have been a personal tragedy, and yet Hermione never mourns its loss. She never speaks of it. That silence is one of the strangest inconsistencies in the entire saga. Harry's wand, when repaired by the Elder Wand, regains its former power. Harry tells Ron and Hermione that he will return the Elder Wand to Dumbledore's tomb. I think that's where it belongs. But before that, he uses its unparalleled magic to mend what seemed beyond repair. Why then did he not offer the same to Hermione? Was the opportunity missed? Did she refuse? Could there have been another reason? Consider this. The Elder Wand only truly obeys its rightful master. Harry had become that master after disarming Draco Malfoy at Malfoy Manor, but the Elder Wand's loyalty is deeply personal. As Dumbledore says in the Deathly Hallows, the wand chooses the wizard, and the Elder Wand will only serve one who has truly conquered its previous owner. Perhaps Harry, in his humility, felt it was not his place to repair another's wand, even one belonging to his best friend. Or perhaps Hermione, ever cautious, refused to be part of a ritual involving such a dangerous object. And there is yet another possibility, one rarely explored. Perhaps Hermione, after the battle, returned to Ollivander. The wand maker had been tortured nearly to madness in Malfoy Manor, but he survived. In the Deathly Hallows, when Harry speaks with him, Ollivander is lucid enough to discuss wand lore in detail. Could it be that Hermione visited him in private, asked him to create a new wand that would resemble the one she had lost, or even attempted to restore the old one with his guidance? The mechanics of wand repair are elusive. The series shows very few examples of wands being repaired at all. Ron Weasley, after accidentally breaking his wand in the Chamber of Secrets, suffers through nearly a year of magical mishaps before getting a replacement. His spellcasting becomes so unreliable that even simple spells rebound or explode. Hermione, being far more advanced and cautious, would not have settled for a damaged wand. And yet, in the books that follow, there's no sign of magical instability in her performance. Her spells work as sharply as ever. One might point to Hermione's love of books and magical knowledge. If anyone could have found a way to repair a wand without relying on the Elder Wand, it would be her. During her time on the run with Harry and Ron, she carried the Tales of Beedle the Bard, Hogwarts, a History, and countless other books enchanted to fit inside her beaded bag. Could she have come across a rare spell, an obscure method from ancient lore? We must remember that Hermione is the same witch who figured out how to use a time turner responsibly. She brewed Polyjuice Potion as a second year. She rewrote the rules of house elf freedom with SPEW. If anyone could have delved into wand lore and found a method of healing wood, it was her. Perhaps she read of an old druidic rite, something long forgotten by modern wand-makers. Perhaps under the moonlight or in the shadows of the Forbidden Forest, she restored her wand in secret, fearing ridicule or misunderstanding. There is, too, the possibility that she fashioned her own wand. Unlikely, yes, but not impossible. Wizards and witches of the past often crafted their own wands when the services of wand-makers were unavailable. In the tales of Beedle the Bard, there are hints of primitive wands carved from elder branches or unicorn tail hairs harvested in ritual. Hermione had access to magical forests, ancient tomes, and a mind unmatched among her peers. Could she have created a wand that looked like her old one, but was powered by something altogether more personal? If so, it may explain why no one asked. Perhaps it looked the same. Perhaps the magic flowed just as strongly. But maybe, just maybe, Hermione knew that what she held was not the same wood, not the same core, not the same bond. And yet to speak of it would be to expose a painful truth that something deeply personal had been lost in that battle and could never be fully reclaimed. The absence of any mention in Rowling's own post-canon interviews deepens the mystery. She has explained minute details, such as the meaning behind wandwoods, the fates of secondary characters, and even what jobs the trio took after the war, and yet never once has she addressed the fate of Hermione's wand. It is as if that detail was either deliberately concealed or deemed irrelevant. But fans disagree. For readers, a wand is not just a tool, it is an extension of the wizard's soul. The silence is made more curious by the fact that Rowling had taken great care to describe the significance of wand loyalty, wand matching, and wand behavior across all 7 books. The Elder Wand itself, the centerpiece of the final book, is a testament to the emotional and magical weight a wand carries. To ignore Hermione's wand feels like a missing piece of a larger puzzle. Some have theorized that Hermione may have received a new wand and that Ollivander made it for her. In fan discussions, a common suggestion is that the new wand was similarly constructed, perhaps vinewood again, maybe even with a dragon heartstring core. But if so, this raises another question. Why did Hermione accept a new wand when she had grown so attached to the old one? Could it be that she didn't have a choice? Or was it a symbolic act, a way of leaving behind the trauma of war? In ancient lore, the breaking of a magical item is often associated with the breaking of a chapter in life. Could Hermione have seen the destruction of her wand as a severing of her childhood? A painful, final rite of passage from student to warrior, from girl to woman? It is also worth remembering that Hermione was the most practical of the trio. She knew that magic was dangerous, unpredictable, and often needed firm boundaries. Perhaps she decided rationally that the wand had served its purpose, that the war had claimed many things, innocence, friends, even Fred Weasley, and that a wand was just another casualty. Perhaps for her, the wand was not to be mourned, but replaced with a quiet dignity. In the epilogue, set 19 years later, Hermione appears with her family at King's Cross Station. There is no mention of the wand she holds, but we know she still practices magic. She still works in the ministry. She is now a mother, a leader, and one of the most powerful witches of her age. Whether she holds her old wand or a new one is never clarified. But the mystery remains for those who care to look. And perhaps that is the final point, that not all things are explained, that not every magical act is detailed, that even in the world of wizards, some wounds remain unspoken, some repairs are made quietly, in solitude, in grief, and in strength, and maybe Hermione Granger, the brightest witch of her age, simply moved on. Number 19. Why did Tom Riddle use the diary if he didn't know about Horcruxes? Tom Riddle's diary was no ordinary object. Crafted with a sinister elegance, It was the first of its kind, a vessel of memory, charm, and malevolence, capable of whispering life back into the shade of its creator. Yet the diary, so central to Chamber of Secrets, sits at odds with later revelations about Horcruxes. According to Dumbledore in Half-Blood Prince, Riddle only truly understood Horcruxes after leaving Hogwarts. And so we are left with a puzzle. If he had not yet studied Horcruxes, why did he infuse this particular diary with such potent magic, and why choose it as a weapon to open the Chamber of Secrets once more? The diary behaves exactly like a Horcrux. It absorbs Ginny Weasley's soul, feeds on her fears, and uses her body to do Riddle's bidding. And yet at the time of its creation, Tom Riddle would have still been a schoolboy, perhaps only 16, still a prefect at Hogwarts, still admired by professors, still hiding behind his charm. The timeline, as given by Dumbledore, suggests that his deeper understanding of soul-splitting magic came much later, but if that is so, why would a student, no matter how precocious, have created such a dangerous object? The diary was not merely enchanted, it was alive. This fact alone suggests an intention beyond mere trickery or curiosity. To understand the contradiction, we must examine who Tom Riddle was at that age. In his 5th year, he discovered the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets and unleashed the basilisk. A Muggle-born girl, Myrtle Warren, died. Riddle was not caught, but he was forced to close the chamber and return Hogwarts to peace. He needed a scapegoat and framed Hagrid. He needed a trophy, and he kept the diary. It is not difficult to imagine that even then Riddle felt the chamber had unfinished business. Perhaps the diary began simply as a magical journal designed to record memories and thoughts, something like the Pensieve, but darker, something that could store not just memory, but will. But Riddle never created anything that served a single purpose. Even his trophies became tools. It is entirely plausible that he intended the diary to be used one day by another, a loyal follower perhaps, or an inquisitive student. He would leave behind his legacy, hidden within the pages. The memory would awaken, persuade, and manipulate. It would do what he no longer could. His charm and intelligence would remain preserved, waiting to take hold of someone vulnerable. Ginny Weasley was the perfect candidate, young, emotionally fragile, isolated in a new school. The diary preyed upon her weaknesses. The way the diary draws Ginny in is disturbingly intimate. She confides in it. It comforts her. It responds. Then it begins to take control. Riddle's own words from the book make this clear. I grew stronger and stronger on a diet of her deepest fears, her darkest secrets. This is not mere enchantment, this is parasitism. It is the behavior of a soul fragment, not a typical cursed object. At the time Chamber of Secrets was published, readers didn't yet know about Horcruxes, but with hindsight, this was a clue, a breadcrumb left by Rowling to be followed much later. Dumbledore's interpretation in Half-Blood Prince seems to contradict this. He tells Harry that Riddle only truly learned about Horcruxes after leaving Hogwarts and that he likely created the first one after murdering his father. But the diary is the first Horcrux, and the murder of Myrtle Warren predates the Riddle family's death. This discrepancy suggests that Riddle may have discovered the idea of soul-splitting earlier than Dumbledore believed. Perhaps he did not yet understand the full process, or the terrible consequences, but the spark of the idea had ignited. He had killed, he had power, he had secrets. Why not experiment? Slughorn's conversation with the young Riddle in Half-Blood Prince is telling. Riddle asks about 7 Horcruxes, not 1. 7. This is not a boy just beginning to explore immortality. This is a boy with a plan. So if he was already aiming for 7, then surely the diary was not an accident. Perhaps he did not yet call it a Horcrux. Perhaps he hadn't yet perfected the ritual, but he had made something, a magical echo of himself, bound to an object through murder. If anything, the diary is a prototype, a test, and it worked. Its danger lies in its duality. Most Horcruxes are inert. They do not think or act until they are disturbed. The diary, however, takes initiative. It converses, seduces, manipulates. It opens doors, literally and metaphorically. Riddle may have chosen the diary for this reason. It allowed his younger self to relive the triumph of discovering the chamber and to reclaim that moment through someone else's hands. The diary doesn't simply influence Ginny, it uses her to reopen the chamber that he could no longer access. It becomes, in essence, a weaponized memory, not just a record of his past, but an instrument of future terror. There's an irony here that Riddle, obsessed with control, created an object capable of acting without his permission. Years later, Dumbledore remarks to Harry that the diary was a very unusual Horcrux because it had been designed not merely to hide a soul fragment, but to function. This makes it a liability. Voldemort's later Horcruxes, Marvella Gaunt's ring, Hufflepuff's cup, Nagini, were hidden, protected, inert. The diary was exposed, active, and vulnerable. It could be destroyed, and it was. This exposure may explain why Voldemort never created another Horcrux like it. The loss of the diary was more than a tactical defeat. It was a spiritual wound. A part of him was gone forever. He did not know at the time that the diary had been destroyed, but when he learned, it must have been a blow. It's one thing to lose an object, it's another to lose part of yourself. If the diary was his first Horcrux, it was also his first failure, and he never repeated that mistake. The diary's role in Chamber of Secrets is also a narrative mirror. It reflects the danger of obsession, Ginny's obsession with Harry, Riddle's obsession with purity, the magical community's obsession with secrets. It reflects how history repeats itself. A girl dies, the chamber opens, blame falls on the wrong person. And in the center of it all is Tom Riddle's voice, whispering from the past, manipulating the present. Ginny poured out her soul to me, he tells Harry, and her soul happened to be exactly what I needed. And this is not a boy dabbling in magic. This is a predator who knows exactly what he's doing. Could this really have been accidental? Could a 16-year-old boy, still years away from becoming the Dark Lord, have stumbled into creating something so advanced, so dangerous by chance? It seems unlikely. Even if Riddle did not yet know the word Horcrux, he clearly understood the principles. Magic is not defined by vocabulary, it is defined by will. And Riddle's will was unmatched. He wanted to endure, he wanted to leave a legacy. The diary was his first attempt. There's also the question of timing. If Riddle murdered Myrtle in his 5th year and asked Slughorn about Horcruxes in his 6th or 7th, it suggests that the soul-splitting was already underway. The books don't make this explicit, but they don't have to. The evidence is there. The diary contains the essence of Riddle at 16. He is frozen in time, preserved exactly as he was during the chamber's first opening. This is not merely a memory, it is consciousness. The use of Ginny Weasley as the diary's victim is also significant. She is a pure blood. She is a member of a prominent wizarding family. Her death would have been symbolic. Riddle's hatred of Muggle-borns is well documented, but his desire to sow chaos among the blood traitors is equally important. By targeting Ginny, he weakens Arthur Weasley, undermines Dumbledore's support base, and shatters the sense of safety at Hogwarts. This is strategy, not chance. Some have suggested that Lucius Malfoy's role in planting the diary complicates things. Was Voldemort aware that Lucius had it? Unlikely. The diary was lost after Voldemort's first downfall. Lucius saw it as a tool to discredit Arthur Weasley and Dumbledore. He did not know it was a Horcrux. But this ignorance only underscores the diary's volatility. A dark object with a mind of its own, passed between hands like an ordinary artifact, capable of killing children and reviving the darkest wizard of the age. This is not a simple magical trinket, it is a time bomb. It's easy to assume that Rowling introduced Horcruxes later and retrofitted the diary into that mythology, but the craftsmanship of Chamber of Secrets suggests otherwise. The diary behaves too much like a Horcrux to be coincidence. Rowling planted seeds. She played the long game. And Riddle's character, as it unfolds over 7 books, supports this interpretation. He was always steps ahead, always thinking beyond the moment. The diary was not an afterthought. It was a blueprint. Dumbledore's words to Harry about the diary are revealing. Lord Voldemort was prepared to leave behind a fragment of his soul to ensure that the chamber would be opened even if he was not there to do it himself. That sounds like a Horcrux. But Dumbledore adds, he considered it a special trophy. A trophy, yes, but one designed to act. One that could think, speak, and kill. Voldemort may have underestimated its value or overestimated its secrecy, but he did not misunderstand its purpose. In the end, the diary is a contradiction. It should not exist when it does. It should not be what it is. But that is what makes it so compelling. It is the first ghost of Voldemort's future. It is the whisper of immortality. And it is the beginning of his undoing. For in creating the diary, Tom Riddle ensured that one day someone would find it. Someone would fight it, and someone would win. That someone was Harry Potter. And the diary, brilliant and terrible, was the first piece of the dark puzzle to be shattered. Number 20. Why didn't Voldemort check his soul? Of all the questions surrounding Lord Voldemort, the darkest wizard of the age, the most curious one remains unanswered. Why did he never verify the state of his soul? In a man so obsessed with conquering death, so methodical in securing his immortality, it is baffling that he relied on assumption rather than certainty. The fragments of his soul, ripped apart and hidden in Horcruxes, were the foundation of his invincibility. And yet Voldemort never truly confirmed that they remained intact. He gambled everything, his body, his mind, his power, on the belief that his soul was safe. But why? Throughout Half-Blood Prince and Deathly Hallows, Dumbledore and Harry pieced together the number of Horcruxes Voldemort created. From the diary of Tom Riddle to the final fragment lodged in Nagini, the trail is stained with blood and sacrifice. They determined that Voldemort intended to split his soul into 7 parts, 6 hidden in objects, and the final piece within himself. But even this calculation is conjecture. As Dumbledore said, he desired 7, and yet there could be more. The horrifying truth is that no one, perhaps not even Voldemort himself, knew for certain how many pieces existed. This ambiguity is at odds with Voldemort's nature. He is not a man who tolerates uncertainty. Voldemort's obsession with control defined his every decision. From his youth at the orphanage, where he hoarded secrets and manipulated others, to his later years orchestrating a war with a precision rivaling military generals, his need for domination was absolute. He studied dark magic with a fervor unmatched, pushing further into the abyss than any wizard before him. He tore apart his soul knowingly, deliberately, to defy mortality. And yet, despite his brilliance and ruthlessness, he did not seek confirmation of his greatest magical work. There are spells in the wizarding world capable of profound revelation, magic that could have, perhaps, shown Voldemort the state of his soul. The Horcrux itself is an arcane art, hidden and feared, but not unknowable. Slughorn, when coaxed by Harry, admitted that the creation of a Horcrux was not only real, but that Voldemort had sought to create multiple ones, an act so unnatural it left even the seasoned potioneer trembling. 7, he said, horrified. Isn't it bad enough to divide the soul once? This is all hypothetical, of course. But it wasn't. Voldemort had already done it, repeatedly. If such magic exists, if the soul can be measured or viewed, Voldemort would not have shied away from it. He was not frightened by dark knowledge, he craved it. He sought out the deepest, most forbidden spells, learned Parseltongue from his ancestor Salazar Slytherin, and uncovered the secret of the Chamber of Secrets. He even travelled to obscure corners of the world to uncover lost tomes. He mutilated his very being, undergoing transformations that left him unrecognizable as Tom Riddle. It strains belief to assume he simply didn't bother to check on the state of his soul. But perhaps it was not apathy. Perhaps the truth is more complex. Perhaps Voldemort couldn't check. Maybe the magic required was so ancient, so inherently pure or inherently corrupt, that even he could not wield it. Perhaps such a spell demanded full spiritual clarity, something a man so deeply fractured could never achieve. For one must wonder, what does it take to look at your soul? What mirror could reflect it when it has been sliced, burned, and buried in murder? This idea echoes in Deathly Hallows when Voldemort begins to unravel. As Horcrux after Horcrux is destroyed, he grows more erratic, more unstable. And yet he does not notice. He believes the Elder Wand's failure lies in its allegiance, not in his diminishing strength. When Nagini is slain by Neville, Voldemort does not cry out in pain as Harry did when a Horcrux within him was destroyed. Instead, Voldemort simply dies unceremoniously, without fanfare. He was empty, and he never realized it. That ignorance is his most tragic flaw. Not arrogance, though he had it in abundance, but blindness. He thought himself all-seeing, all-knowing, but he could not sense the decay within him. After the locket was destroyed, after the cup, the ring, the diadem, he did not feel the rupture. Even as his enemies closed in, even as his powers waned, he did not ask the most crucial question: am I still immortal? Consider the moment in the Forbidden Forest. Harry walks to his death, the Horcrux within him prepared for sacrifice. Voldemort stands across from him, wand in hand. The killing curse strikes. One soul fragment dies, yet Voldemort remains unaware. He sees Harry's fall as victory. "He is dead," he cries. "The boy who lived is no more." But he is wrong. He doesn't feel the change because he can't. His soul, so fractured, is beyond sensation. Dumbledore explains this to Harry in the limbo between life and death. He was ripped apart, he says, and this piece of soul was trapped, unloved, unpitied. The creature beneath the bench, whimpering, disfigured, was all that remained of Voldemort's humanity. But Voldemort himself never saw it. He never wanted to see it. For all his power, he lacked the courage to face his own damnation. This is where his fear truly lived, not in death, but in introspection. To confront his soul would mean confronting the cost of his ambition. To peer into himself would mean acknowledging the children he murdered, the friends he betrayed, the body he warped, the mind he poisoned. He would see Myrtle, Bertha Jorkins, Frank Bryce, even his own father. He would see the girl who screamed in the cave. As he forced her to drink the potion protecting the locket, he would see what he had become, and he would not survive it. In Chamber of Secrets, young Tom Riddle preserved a perfect smug version of himself in the diary, a Horcrux, untainted by remorse. He clung to that ideal. He believed the soul could be controlled like everything else, broken, shaped, hidden. But the soul, by nature, resists such domination. It rebels, it decays, and when its pieces are severed, it screams in silence. Voldemort never heard that scream. In contrast, consider Harry. He becomes a living Horcrux, unknowingly carrying a fragment of the Dark Lord's soul, and yet he feels its presence, the whispers, the anger, the thoughts not his own. "He is in my head," he tells Dumbledore. "He's close." The connection is painful, invasive, and undeniable. But Voldemort, the creator of Horcruxes, the architect of soul-splitting, feels nothing. Why? The likely answer is that Voldemort was no longer whole enough to feel anything at all. The destruction of his soul went beyond fragmentation. It led to numbness. He had so thoroughly annihilated his own humanity that he became less than human. Where others would sense loss, grief, even fear, he felt only rage and hunger. These were the last emotions he could access, and even they were echoes. Bellatrix Lestrange once looked at him with worship and fear, declaring, "The Dark Lord knows I speak the truth." But did he? Or had he long ceased to recognize truth at all? His reality was shaped by delusion, by the belief that he could not die, that he could not fail. When the truth came crashing down, it was too late. He died thinking he was master of death, but in truth, death mastered him. Long before his body fell, the final insult is poetic. He dies a mortal death, his soul already so diminished that no trace remains, no ghost, no echo, no scream. He vanishes into the air like a man who never existed. The piece of soul that once lay hidden in Harry is released, and the others have long since been destroyed. There is nothing left. The man who feared death more than anything dies without even knowing what death is. He never checked his soul because he believed it obeyed him. He thought it a tool, not a truth. He imagined immortality as a puzzle he had solved, not a path he had corrupted. And in that arrogance, he fell. He never asked the question Dumbledore begged others to ask. What happens to the soul when it is damaged? For him, the answer came too late. Perhaps, somewhere deep in the veil beyond the Department of Mysteries, there is a whisper of Tom Riddle. Not Voldemort, but the boy who loved power because he feared weakness. A boy who never knew love, who mistrusted kindness, who shaped himself into a monster to survive a world he couldn't understand. If that whisper exists, it asks one thing only. Why didn't I look? And no one answers. Number 21. Why didn't Harry use Sirius's mirror earlier? In the dusty confines of the trunk at the foot of Harry's bed, in the Gryffindor dormitory, beneath forgotten chocolate frog cards and broken quills, lay an object that might have changed everything. It was given to him by Sirius Black, once a fugitive godfather, and the closest thing Harry ever had to family. A two-way mirror hidden in a square package wrapped in old parchment, left unopened for too long. A gift meant for connection, a lifeline. But Harry never looked at it until it was too late. When he finally glimpsed a shard of Sirius's eye staring back at him from within the mirror's depths, the man it belonged to was already gone, swallowed by the veil in the Department of Mysteries. Sirius had given Harry the mirror during Christmas of his 5th year, tucked it inside a package with a note. "Use it if you need me." That was the entirety of the instruction, as brief and elusive as Sirius himself. In the chaos of Harry's teenage anger, the swelling tides of Dumbledore's silence, and Umbridge's tyranny at Hogwarts, the mirror went unopened, unnoticed. It was not that Harry deliberately ignored it, it was that he buried it, both physically and emotionally. He was furious with Sirius for being caged in Grimmauld Place, helpless to act. He was angry with Dumbledore for avoiding him, and he was angry with himself, caught in the tangled web of Voldemort's mental intrusions. What is most baffling is not that Harry forgot the mirror, but that he never returned to it even after the first tremors of doubt set in. When he saw the vision of Sirius being tortured in the Department of Mysteries, a mere glance into the mirror could have changed the course of events. He could have looked, seen Sirius safe and sound at Grimmauld Place, and never rushed headlong into the Ministry. The disastrous rescue mission, the duel with Death Eaters, and ultimately Sirius's death all could have been prevented. But Harry was 16, impulsive, and already bearing the weight of the prophecy. He had been manipulated emotionally, intellectually isolated, and vulnerable to Voldemort's visions. Yet within his very belongings was a magical object that allowed instant, private communication with the one person who would have told him the truth. It is not simply a case of Harry being forgetful. It was a narrative choice that required him to remain disconnected, and when he finally opens the mirror in Deathly Hallows, it is only a fragment, symbolic of what remains of Sirius, broken, partial, and unreachable. The emotional truth is that Harry was not ready for that mirror. Accepting its use would have meant opening himself to Sirius during a time when his own guilt and rage made such openness impossible. He had told Sirius bitterly during one of their fireside talks, "You're not my father," and slammed the connection shut. To then turn around and use a device that symbolized their bond would have required a level of vulnerability Harry had not yet achieved. He kept it buried like he buried his grief. Out of sight, out of mind. Still, the magical world is not ruled by psychology alone. Practicality demands an answer. The mirror is a device of immense convenience. It allows communication without flu powder, owls, or patronuses. It bypasses all barriers. The Order of the Phoenix, a group riddled with secrecy and desperation, could have used such a tool strategically. That Harry never utilized it, and that Sirius never mentioned it again after gifting it, raises eyebrows. It smacks of a plot device introduced too late. A narrative band-aid when Harry needed to call Aberforth in Deathly Hallows. Even more troubling is how the mirror is reintroduced. When Harry sees the blue eye in the shard after Malfoy Manor, he assumes it belongs to Dumbledore. A bright blue eye, like a flash in the dark. But it is Aberforth's. Why then did Sirius not make this mirror's function explicit? Why didn't Harry recognize its worth before the Ministry debacle? The entire fifth book is framed around Harry's growing isolation and desperation. Wouldn't this mirror have been the very thing to bridge that growing void? J.K. Rowling never explicitly answers why Harry didn't use the mirror. But it is not merely an oversight. The story required Sirius to die, and the narrative tension of Order of the Phoenix is built upon Harry's alienation. A quick glance into a magical mirror would have unravelled the emotional scaffolding of the book. Thus the mirror had to remain hidden, both from Harry and from the reader, until it could conveniently serve its purpose in a later, more desperate context. When Sirius gives Harry the mirror, it is during a period of enforced silence from Dumbledore. Harry is being shut out deliberately. No occlumency lessons have yet begun. Voldemort is just beginning to plant visions in Harry's head. The timing of the gift is key. It was a life vest Sirius tossed into a turbulent sea, but the boy refused to see the waves were rising. If Harry had known then what he knew later, if he had taken the note seriously, opened the parcel, and simply looked, he might have questioned the vision of Sirius in the Ministry as a trap. The Department of Mysteries became the crucible in which Harry's innocence died. Every step that led him there was marked by manipulation, but even when Hermione begged him to verify the vision, to be rational, he clung to it. "He's suffering," he insisted. It never once crossed his mind to reach for the mirror. The reader is left screaming internally. Check the mirror, just look. But Harry does not. And Rowling gives us no internal monologue or scene reminding us of its existence because the mirror had become inconvenient. It reappears like a ghost in Deathly Hallows, barely explained. Harry carries a sliver, seeing Aberforth's eye, not knowing how it works. Aberforth later reveals he got it from Sirius, who had a twin set, but even that raises questions. Was this device not known to others in the Order? Did Sirius never mention it to Lupin? To Dumbledore? Its very design contradicts the limitations of magical communication established earlier. Why use a flu network if these mirrors exist? In Prisoner of Azkaban, Sirius is shown as clever, resourceful, and intimately tied to James Potter. The mirror seems like something the Marauders would have cherished, perhaps even invented. Yet it is never mentioned before its gifting. Its sudden appearance and disappearance without deeper lore suggests it was conceived to serve a specific narrative beat, Sirius reaching Harry beyond death, or at least through legacy. That legacy, however, is stained by missed opportunity. After Sirius's death, Harry does not open the mirror until Half-Blood Prince has ended. In grief, he smashes it, frustrated and haunted. He keeps the shard, not out of memory, but because he feels something unresolved. That tiny piece then becomes his strange beacon in the darkest times, reflecting the blue eye watching over him. In that sense, it becomes more spiritual than functional, less a device and more a symbol. Yet that symbolism feels forced when one recalls the original promise, "Use it if you need me." Had Harry used the mirror when he needed it most, Sirius might still be alive. The entire Ministry catastrophe might have been avoided. That he didn't is more than a tragedy, it's a crack in the world-building. The mirror was too powerful, too useful, too easily able to dissolve tension, and so it lay hidden until it could re-enter the plot with new meaning. Harry's failure to use the mirror stems from layered causes: youth, trauma, mistrust, narrative necessity. But none of these excuses erase the bitter irony. For all the spells, curses, and protections Harry had at his disposal, the one object that could have saved his godfather was never even unwrapped. It is the cruel beauty of the story that Harry's pain is often a result of his own misjudgments. He is not omniscient. He is a teenager, bruised and cornered. But the mirror is not a simple metaphor, it is real magic, and real magic has consequences. The cost of its neglect was the life of the man who gave it. When Dumbledore later tells Harry it is our choices that show what we truly are, we see the mirror as the embodiment of that idea. Harry chose trust in a vision over doubt, chosen family over caution, emotion over logic. The mirror could have clarified reality, but he wasn't ready to see. And perhaps that is the heart of it. Perhaps the mirror isn't just a device, but a test of readiness, of connection, of truth. And Harry, for all his courage, wasn't ready to face the truth that Sirius might not always be there. By the time Aberforth's eye peers through the shard in Deathly Hallows, it's no longer about Sirius, it's about help coming from unexpected places. The mirror changes hands, functions, meanings, but it never loses the ghost of what it might have been. And that makes it one of the most tragic magical objects in the entire series. Number 22. Why didn't Voldemort use his mental connection with Harry more often? In the quiet corridors of the Department of Mysteries, amidst the whirling prophecies and whispering shadows, something irreversible had taken place. Harry Potter lay stunned on the floor, his mind reeling, not only from the confrontation with Death Eaters, but from something far deeper and more dangerous. His mind had become a corridor that Voldemort could walk through. This was not a metaphor. This was literal, and it had already been used as a weapon. But the strange thing is not that Voldemort invaded Harry's mind. The strange thing is that he didn't do it more often. The mental link between Harry and Voldemort, first subtly hinted at in Goblet of Fire when Harry collapses with sudden pain in his scar as Voldemort murders Frank Bryce, becomes more explicit in Order of the Phoenix. Harry begins to experience vivid dreams, no longer his own, but Voldemort's. He witnesses through the serpent Nagini as she attacks Arthur Weasley. He sees a corridor in the Department of Mysteries over and over, drawn to it as if summoned. The pain is real. The images are real. The bond is undeniably real. He's got a direct line to the Dark Lord, as Moody exclaims when the truth comes out. Voldemort, who above all things prizes control and manipulation, would surely recognize the tactical advantage of such a connection. For a man so deeply invested in deception, infiltration, and magical superiority, this psychic pathway into Harry's mind should have been more than a passing tool. Why then did he not exploit it with the consistency of a general using a spy behind enemy lines? The question becomes even more perplexing when we consider how often Voldemort used other tools, occlumency, legilimency, imperius, and even possession, without hesitation. We are told that Voldemort becomes aware of the bond's usefulness. In fact, he directly manipulates it to lure Harry into the Department of Mysteries with a false vision of Sirius Black being tortured. This maneuver is as clever as it is cruel. It nearly succeeds, and only the presence of Dumbledore's army and the timely intervention of the Order of the Phoenix prevents total disaster. But this moment, this brilliant and sinister move, is not repeated. After this high point, the mental link nearly disappears from the plot. Voldemort never again uses it so effectively. the question burns brighter. Why? One potential reason lies in Voldemort's pride and fear. Though he believed himself the master of life and death, Voldemort feared what he could not control. After Harry's invasion of his own mind, when Harry sees into Voldemort's emotions, and for one shocking moment fills him with love and grief, Voldemort recoils. This moment occurs after Sirius's death, when Harry, consumed with emotion, repels Voldemort's possession, not through strength or skill, but through sheer human emotion. "You're the weak one," Harry tells Dumbledore later, "and you'll never know love or friendship. And I feel sorry for you." Voldemort, perhaps for the first time, had encountered something within the link that terrified him. But before that moment of recoil, there were windows of opportunity. Voldemort could have invaded Harry's thoughts during the school year. He could have planted false memories or distorted real ones. He could have used the link to discover where Harry was, what he was learning, who he was talking to. But instead, we see the link used only sporadically, often accidentally, as when Harry experiences Voldemort's rage after the theft of the prophecy. "He's really angry," Harry says after the break-in, clutching his scar, "like he's never been before." The pain is spontaneous, not induced. If Voldemort was actively probing Harry's mind, surely he would have learned far more than this. The key lies in control. Voldemort despises the uncontrollable. The mind, even with legitimacy, is a treacherous place. Dumbledore tells Harry that neither can live while the other survives, and that the link goes both ways. Voldemort could not be certain that Harry wasn't seeing into him as well. Perhaps he assumed the boy was too weak to exploit this, but after the possession failed in the Ministry of Magic, he may have grown cautious. For a man whose soul had been split 7 ways to hide his vulnerabilities, the idea that anyone, especially a 16-year-old, could peer into his mind must have been unbearable. Yet this doesn't fully explain the restraint. Voldemort was not known for restraint. He tortured children. He manipulated families. He turned Hogwarts into a prison. Why then did he shy from one of the most powerful tools at his disposal? One explanation may lie in Dumbledore's influence. Once Harry begins occlumency training with Snape, the link is partially suppressed. True, the training is disastrous and ends with Harry's invasive journey into Snape's memories, but the effort marks a turning point. Dumbledore, understanding the danger, tries to cut off Voldemort's access. The very reason he avoids Harry all year is because proximity could strengthen the bond. "I cared about you too much," Dumbledore confesses. "I thought I could shield you better by keeping my distance." Still, even with Dumbledore's distance and the broken occlumency lessons, the bond persists. Voldemort must have sensed it. He used it to deceive Harry with the vision of Sirius. He certainly noticed when Harry reacted to his emotions or saw his surroundings. But perhaps Voldemort, master of strategy, feared exposure more than he craved knowledge. After all, Harry's access to Voldemort's mind was not without insight. He saw the snake, he saw Rookwood's face, he saw Malfoy kneel. These were not random images, they were private moments. Had Voldemort continued to use the bond, Harry might have seen more, perhaps even the locations of Horcruxes. Voldemort, obsessed with secrecy, could not allow that risk. There is also the question of magical fatigue. We don't often think of magic as exhausting in the books, but certain spells and effects clearly drain the caster. The mental link is not a spell but a scar, a result of a backfired curse. Using it might require a state of mind Voldemort could not easily enter. Perhaps he needed emotional fury or intense pain to pierce through the bond. Perhaps he could not reach Harry unless certain conditions were met. That would explain why the connections often occurred during moments of Voldemort's strong emotions, when he was angry or triumphant or in pain. In Half-Blood Prince, the link seems almost entirely dormant. Harry's scar doesn't hurt. He comments on it, even noting it as oddly peaceful. Dumbledore suggests that this might be because Voldemort has closed his mind. "I think he is using occlumency against you, Harry," Dumbledore says, "to shut you out." This would be consistent with Voldemort's increased caution. After nearly losing control in the Department of Mysteries, Voldemort chooses to shut the connection entirely, severing one of the few bridges between him and the boy he fears. Voldemort's failure to continue exploiting the link is also thematic. Rowling uses the bond as a metaphor for duality, light and dark, love and hate, connection and isolation. When Harry can feel Voldemort, he loses part of himself. He becomes angrier, more impulsive, less trusting. "I feel dirty," he says after one vision. The link threatens to erode his identity. Voldemort, ironically, fears the same. In connecting to Harry, he experiences what he most despises: emotion, vulnerability, guilt. The same scar that binds them could undo them both. It is significant that during the final confrontation in Deathly Hallows, Voldemort no longer tries to exploit the mental link. By then, Harry understands it better than Voldemort. He uses it to sense Voldemort's location. He guesses the final Horcrux is Nagini. He walks into the forest with full knowledge of what he must do. Voldemort, by contrast, is blind to Harry's mind. The bond, once his weapon, has become Harry's compass. It is Voldemort who is isolated now, not Harry. In a way, the mental link represents the very flaw that destroys Voldemort, the inability to comprehend human connection. He sees the bond only as a tool, something to manipulate. But for Harry, it becomes a responsibility, even a gift. He learns to navigate it, to close it off, to control it. In the end, he masters what Voldemort only feared. And perhaps that is why Voldemort did not use it more often, because deep down, in the shredded remnants of his fractured soul, he knew that this connection was not entirely his to command. It belonged to both of them. And as much as he might reach into Harry's mind, Harry might reach back. The mind is not a battlefield Voldemort could dominate without consequence, so he turned away, just as he turned away from love, loyalty, and truth. Voldemort's sporadic use of the link was not a plot oversight. It was a reflection of his character, brilliant but blind, powerful but paranoid, strategic but scared of the very thing he created. The connection between him and Harry was a living paradox, born of murder, yet filled with echoes of love. In exploiting it, he risked losing the very control he worshipped, and for the Dark Lord that was a price too high to pay. Number 23, why didn't Dumbledore reveal more information sooner? Of all the choices Albus Dumbledore made throughout the Harry Potter series, his persistent silence might be the most enigmatic. It wasn't until the final chapters of Half-Blood Prince that he began to share with Harry Potter the truths upon which the fate of the magical world balanced. By then, it was almost too late. Throughout 6 years of escalating danger, Dumbledore had remained a puppet master behind the curtain, doling out riddles, half-answers, and long stares in place of clear guidance. The stakes were apocalyptic, yet his method remained cryptic. The first significant omission was the prophecy itself. It had been made in the very year of Harry's birth, delivered by Sybil Trelawney in a dingy back room at the Hog's Head. "The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches," she had said, her voice layered with that eerie second sight. Dumbledore heard it, believed it, and took action to protect the Potters. But he never told Harry about it until the end of Order of the Phoenix, after Sirius had already fallen through the veil. Until then, Harry had been fighting blindly, thinking Voldemort's interest in him was personal, without knowing that he was, by prophecy, a marked opponent. Why wait so long to reveal this crucial truth? Dumbledore himself confessed regret. "I have watched you struggling under more burdens than any student who has passed through this school," he said, in Order of the Phoenix. But regret does not undo damage. Harry had faced Voldemort 4 times by then. He had entered the graveyard in Goblet of Fire, unprepared for what was to come, and Cedric Diggory died beside him. Could a fuller understanding of the prophecy have changed the outcome? Dumbledore didn't seem to believe in such hypotheticals. Yet he bore the consequences. Even when he began to reveal the prophecy, Dumbledore concealed the deeper layer that Harry himself was a Horcrux. This secret, perhaps the most painful of all, was never spoken aloud until the dying headmaster's memories were passed to Severus Snape. Dumbledore had known since Harry's second year, when he heard the voices only a Parselmouth could hear, that something dark nested within the boy. And still he let him walk the school halls, trusting in a child's moral compass to keep Voldemort's fragment asleep. Dumbledore always positioned his silence as protection. He told Harry repeatedly, "I cared too much about you." Yet the irony was bitter. His affection became a liability. In choosing to protect Harry's innocence, he left him vulnerable. It was not until Dumbledore was dying, poisoned by his own quest for the Resurrection Stone, that he began to open the door to Harry's fate. Even then he filtered truths through the lens of what he thought Harry could handle. Take the Horcrux hunt. In Half-Blood Prince, Dumbledore finally brings Harry along on missions, showing him memories, explaining Tom Riddle's descent into darkness, and outlining the principle of Horcruxes. But he still withholds key details, like the true number of Horcruxes. He guesses at 7, but he doesn't confide in Harry that the scar might be one. He doesn't tell Harry the full list of suspected items. Instead, he leaves vague ideas and dying instructions. "You must obey Severus," he tells Harry. "You must let him tell you what to do." This reliance on Severus Snape, himself a morally ambiguous character, was another dangerous gamble. Dumbledore trusted Snape with more than he trusted Harry. He handed over the ultimate truths to a man whose allegiance was forged in guilt and unspoken love, while the boy, who bore the burden of the prophecy, was left in darkness. Was this strategy? Was it arrogance? Or did Dumbledore, the consummate chess master, believe that revealing all would change the game's outcome for the worse? Consider the Department of Mysteries. Had Harry known about the prophecy earlier, he might not have walked into that trap. Voldemort baited him with a false vision of Sirius in peril, knowing Harry's impulsive nature. That decision led to catastrophe. Dumbledore later said, "I had not wanted to burden you." Yet the burden was already Harry's, whether he was aware of it or not. Information might have made the difference between action and mistake. Even more troubling was Dumbledore's knowledge of the Elder Wand and the Deathly Hallows. These were not minor details. The Hallows were ancient artifacts of incredible power, one of which, the cloak, Harry had possessed since his first year. Dumbledore had deduced their significance by the time he defeated Grindelwald, and yet never fully explained them to Harry. Only after Dumbledore's death did Harry learn the full story, piecing it together from fairy tales, wand lore, and snippets from Xenophilius Lovegood. Why then this pattern of secrecy? Perhaps Dumbledore feared that knowledge would tempt Harry. After all, he himself had been seduced by the Hallows as a young man, dreaming of mastering death. "Does the temptation never lessen?" he asked, staring at the Resurrection Stone. But Dumbledore's failure to trust Harry was, in itself, a reflection of his own past. He feared Harry would fall into the same traps he once had. But Harry was not Dumbledore. It wasn't just Harry who suffered from this silence. The Order of the Phoenix operated with limited coordination. Members like Remus Lupin and Nymphadora Tonks were kept out of the loop. Even McGonagall, loyal and brave, often seemed surprised by the headmaster's choices. When Dumbledore was killed atop the Astronomy Tower, chaos followed. No one knew the full plan. The man who had held all the threads was gone, and the tapestry unravelled. Dumbledore's silence extended to Voldemort's past. He had collected memories, tracked down Riddle's relatives, and stored crucial facts in vials within his office. But he never shared them with anyone else, not even trusted allies like Kingsley Shacklebolt or Arthur Weasley. It was as if Dumbledore believed that only he could assemble the puzzle. When Harry finally inherited those memories, he was left to act alone, in exile, with only Ron and Hermione beside him. During the Triwizard Tournament, when signs of Voldemort's return began to emerge, Dumbledore again chose to observe rather than intervene directly. He allowed Harry to compete, even knowing the event had been corrupted. He suspected Barty Crouch Jr., yet didn't act decisively until the final task. Cedric died, another preventable loss. Dumbledore's strategy might have been patience, but the cost of waiting was always blood. In the pensive, Harry glimpses the younger Dumbledore, ambitious, brilliant, and dangerously idealistic. His friendship with Gellert Grindelwald ended in tragedy, and Ariana Dumbledore died as a result. This early trauma shaped his philosophy. He feared power, feared himself, so he created a system where no one but him held the keys. Perhaps he believed this prevented the abuse of power, yet isolating truth only centralized risk. Dumbledore's final message came in fragments. The snitch inscribed with, "I open at the close," the resurrection stone hidden within, the sword of Gryffindor appearing only to the worthy. These poetic gestures, so full of meaning, depended entirely on faith. He built a maze of metaphors, trusting that Harry would interpret the signs correctly. But war is not poetry. War is fire and death and urgency. Clarity could have saved lives. And still, Harry loved him, even after knowing the flaws, the manipulations, the secrets, because in the end, Dumbledore was not evil. He was afraid of what would happen if he pushed too hard, revealed too much, lost the boy he had grown to see as family. But love, however noble, is not a shield against consequence. In silence, he built a weapon of hope and placed it into a battlefield of blood. Perhaps the greatest irony of Dumbledore's secrecy is that it never truly protected Harry. The boy still faced horror, death, and suffering. He still had to sacrifice himself, walk willingly to death, and face the Dark Lord. What Dumbledore's secrecy did was delay understanding. It prolonged confusion. It isolated Harry from allies who might have helped sooner. It left gaps that nearly cost them the war. When Harry walked into the Forbidden Forest in Deathly Hallows, ready to die, it was not because Dumbledore had prepared him, but because he had chosen love. It was Harry's choice, not a chess piece's move. And in King's Cross, in that strange in-between place, Dumbledore finally admitted the truth. You are the true master of death, because the true master does not seek to run away from death. He accepts that he must die. In the end, Dumbledore's silence was a mirror of his own life, brilliant, burdened, secretive, and full of guilt. He tried to guide the war like a composer leads a symphony, but life is no orchestra. It is chaos and truth and blood. Dumbledore trusted in riddles, but Harry succeeded through friendship, love, and bravery, not secrets. And perhaps if the old man had spoken sooner, fewer hearts would have broken along the way. Number 24. Why can't wizards just apparate into Hogwarts during the battle? From the very first years at the school, one rule was made crystal clear to every student. You can't apparate or disapparate inside the Hogwarts grounds. This warning came not just from professors, but was woven into the very atmosphere of the castle, much like the shifting staircases and vanishing corridors. Hogwarts was ancient, fortified by layers upon layers of spells older than memory itself. It was a castle, both magical and sentient, and its defenses were designed for permanence, not convenience. These magical protections, anti-apparition charms among them, were emphasized so many times that they became part of Hogwarts' character. As Hermione Granger reminded Harry and Ron in Half-Blood Prince, you can't apparate anywhere inside the castle, remember? But then came the chaos of the Battle of Hogwarts. In Deathly Hallows, just as the school is preparing for Voldemort's final assault, witches and wizards begin to arrive. Many appear inside the Room of Requirement, seemingly bypassing every rule that had once seemed unbreakable. The narration briefly mentions that Aberforth Dumbledore, Albus's estranged brother and barman at the Hog's Head, has been guiding people through a hidden tunnel. This tunnel connects his pub to the Room of Requirement, a secret known to no one prior. Yet the logistics remain murky. People just appear. Fred and George Weasley, Lee Jordan, Cho Chang. Some come with wands raised, ready to fight, seemingly not exhausted by any hike through underground passages. Their arrival feels like teleportation, even if no one says the word. And it's not the first time someone appears inside Hogwarts when it seems impossible. Albus Dumbledore himself, the one man who always knew more than he let on, repeatedly makes such entrances. In Order of the Phoenix, when Dolores Umbridge tries to sack Trelawney, Dumbledore materializes in the courtyard, as if stepping from thin air. He arrives just when needed, regal and calm, with no hint of physical effort. Later in that same book, during the unforgettable confrontation in the headmaster's office, Dumbledore disappears with Fawkes the Phoenix. "You may not like him, Minister," McGonagall tells Fudge, "but you can't deny he's got style." Style, yes, but also a blatant disregard for the anti-apparition rules that bound everyone else. So how is Dumbledore able to do this? If the castle is sealed by ancient magic, how does he slip through it? The answer may lie in his knowledge of the castle's enchantments. Dumbledore was not only the headmaster, he was its protector and secret keeper. He knew the deep architecture of Hogwarts, the way a composer knows the silence between the notes. If he apparated into Hogwarts, it likely wasn't by brute force, but through layers of understanding or even permission granted by the castle itself. Perhaps the protections were keyed to him. But once Dumbledore died, the question returned, why can no one else do it? The answer the books offer, albeit vaguely, is that certain areas in Hogwarts can be used as portals, but only under extremely rare circumstances. The Room of Requirement, for example, shifts its nature to suit the need. In Deathly Hallows, when Harry searches for a way out of the castle, the room conjures a hidden tunnel leading to Aberforth's bar. It's a brand new passage created spontaneously. This magical flexibility offers a loophole in the Hogwarts protections. But if the castle can create new exits and entries on command, isn't that essentially a selective form of teleportation? The larger issue is consistency. In Half-Blood Prince, Dumbledore tells Harry there are other ways of getting in and out of the school, but they're well protected. The implication is that magical methods exist but are restricted. Yet during the battle, those restrictions seem to vanish. Reinforcements arrive not only from Hogsmeade, but also from far away, members of the Order of the Phoenix, parents of students, friends and allies. Did all of them crawl through one narrow tunnel? It strains belief. And if the tunnel was that accessible, why hadn't Death Eaters used it earlier? Kingsley Shacklebolt, for example, is one of the first senior members of the Order to arrive. Known for his tactical brilliance and calm under fire, he appears right in the Room of Requirement alongside others. But Kingsley is not a man to take physical risks lightly. If he were truly crawling through miles of cramped tunnel into a besieged castle, we would expect exhaustion. But he is composed, ready, immediately taking charge. It feels more like apparition than subterfuge. And what of Lupin and Tonks? When Harry sees them, he is stunned. They have arrived without warning, from some unseen entrance. No time is spent explaining how. They are just there, in the heart of the school, embracing danger and each other. The same applies to Percy Weasley, who bursts into the room during the tension-filled moments before the final fight, proudly announcing his return to the family. His dramatic timing would be nearly impossible if he had come on foot. It's as though the story required him to arrive exactly then, so he did. These moments suggest that the "you can't apparate into Hogwarts" rule isn't broken, but bent when the plot demands it. J.K. Rowling, in interviews, acknowledged that magic has rules, but also admitted that sometimes those rules serve narrative needs. In this case, the protection around Hogwarts acts like a drawbridge, mostly up, occasionally lowered, selectively allowing those who are deemed safe. The school, or perhaps its remaining wards, may be able to recognize intent. This theory is supported by the behavior of the Room of Requirement. When Draco Malfoy uses it in Half-Blood Prince, he brings Death Eaters into the castle by Vanishing Cabinet. The cabinet functions by connecting two magical spaces, bypassing physical barriers, but it can only work because the other end, the twin cabinet, is intact and unguarded. If Malfoy could use this method, why didn't anyone try using enchanted objects to teleport in during the battle? Perhaps they did, and the books simply don't show it. Not every act of magic during the battle is explained, but the implication remains. Some people got in fast and clean. The logistics are skipped over, not because they are impossible, but because they are inconvenient to describe. It would slow the drama. So instead, arrivals are summarized with lines like, "More people were coming in now, Lupin, Kingsley, Tonks." The details are left to our imagination. There's also the curious case of House Elves. During the battle, led by Creature, they storm into the fray from the kitchens, wielding knives and screaming loyalty to Harry Potter. Could House Elves apparate within the school? Dobby certainly did, multiple times. In Chamber of Secrets, he appears in the hospital wing with a crack. Later, in Order of the Phoenix, he moves through the castle freely. House Elves, it turns out, are exempt from the rule because their magic is different. As Hermione says, you can't apparate or disapparate inside Hogwarts, but House Elves can. This raises the question, why not use House Elves for transport? The Order of the Phoenix had access to multiple House Elves. Couldn't Dobby or Creature bring in allies one by one? There's no textual evidence they did, but the idea seems plausible. At the very least, it demonstrates that the protections around Hogwarts were never absolute, only selective. Then there's the matter of ward fatigue. In Deathly Hallows, the Death Eaters begin attacking Hogwarts defences using giants, curses, and siege tactics. Over time, the protective enchantments fray. In the early stages, they are solid, but as the battle wears on, the spells weaken. Perhaps apparition becomes possible not because someone allows it, but because the magic fails. If enough people strike the same point, if enough death. Eaters chant and assault and burn, then maybe the wards simply collapse and Hogwarts becomes porous. In that case, late arrivals might indeed apparate to the edge of the grounds or even into the castle itself, if the magic faltered just enough. Still, this doesn't explain how Dumbledore managed such clean entries long before any battle, nor does it explain why professors like McGonagall or Snape never used similar methods. If anyone else tried to apparate inside the school during peaceful times, they would splinch or bounce back, which leads us back to the idea that Dumbledore had some secret override, a kind of magical key. It would suit his character, a man who kept secrets not to deceive, but to protect. Even Harry himself never apparates into Hogwarts, even after becoming a powerful wizard. He never even tries. In Cursed Child, a play co-written by Rowling, magical time travel and forbidden charms abound, but even then, apparition into Hogwarts is not attempted. It remains a taboo, a line no one crosses. Unless, of course, they have a phoenix. The phoenix, Fawkes, remains the ultimate wild card. Dumbledore's final escape in Order of the Phoenix is facilitated by Fawkes, who bursts into song, blinding everyone, and disappears with his master in flames. Later, Fawkes saves Harry and the others in the Chamber of Secrets by flying directly in, bringing the sorting hat and healing Harry's wound. If apparition is forbidden, phoenix travel is the loophole, but no one else commands a phoenix. Well, that kind of escape is reserved for a chosen few. Ultimately, the rule about not apparating into Hogwarts serves a narrative purpose more than a magical one. It creates tension, forces characters to use secret passages, and reinforces the idea that Hogwarts is special, untouchable by ordinary means. But like all magical rules in the wizarding world, it is fluid. It bends when it must. It yields to higher powers like Dumbledore's will or the chaos of war. Hogwarts is not a fortress of stone and rule-bound wards. It is a living, breathing entity, wise enough to know when to seal itself and when to open its arms. And in its final hour, it chose to let them in. Number 25. how could Voldemort not know that Harry was a Horcrux? Of all the hidden turns in the Harry Potter saga, none was as quietly explosive as the revelation that Harry Potter himself carried within him a piece of Lord Voldemort's soul. The idea that Harry was an unintentional Horcrux shocked readers, not just for its dramatic value, but for the eerie silence around it. If Voldemort, the very creator of this horrific magical device, placed part of his soul into Harry, how could he not know? The man who once told Slughorn, "How do you split your soul?" with the curiosity of a surgeon studying a new scalpel, failed to recognize the existence of a Horcrux he himself had allegedly made. Creating a Horcrux is described as the darkest of all dark magic. According to Horace Slughorn, it requires a murder, the supreme act of evil, and a deliberate spell unknown to the reader to seal the fragmented soul into an object. This isn't magic that just happens. It is crafted with precision, an act so vile that Slughorn had hidden his memory in shame. Voldemort, in contrast, saw this as ascension. He studied it, perfected it, extended the act beyond known limits by creating 7 soul anchors. How, then, did the most obsessed wizard in the history of soul division accidentally make one more and fail to notice? When Voldemort attacked the Potters on October 31st, 1981, he did not plan to create another Horcrux. His intention was death, not immortality. But when the killing curse rebounded upon him, his soul, already weakened by multiple splittings, was blown apart. The fragment, untethered and shrieking, latched onto the only living thing in the room, the baby Harry. The dark magic did not require a deliberate incantation, not this time. The soul fragment clung to life out of instinct, like a parasite. And yet, that instinctive possession leaves a bitter question hanging. Wouldn't Voldemort have felt it? Wouldn't he, the man who manipulated death itself, have noticed his soul lodged within a boy? The answer lies not only in what Voldemort was, but in what he was becoming. When he was blasted from his body that night, he lost all form and most of his power. For years he existed as less than the meanest ghost, as he later told Harry. He did not sleep. He could not think clearly. He floated in forests possessing snakes and rats, bound to a cursed life of spectral agony. His consciousness, though preserved, was reduced. Perhaps he did not feel the Horcrux because he was barely more than the Horcruxes themselves. Perhaps he had become so fragmented that he no longer had a central point of perception. He had lost not only his body, but his wholeness. Still years later, Voldemort returned. When he was finally resurrected in the graveyard in Goblet of Fire, the audience might assume that all his knowledge and senses would return with him. Yet he continued to miss the most vital truth of his existence, that Harry was his accidental Horcrux. How could the Dark Lord, now armed with a new body, miss the echo of his own soul so close? He could possess Nagini and sense her movements. He knew where his ring and locket had been hidden. But the living boy who had escaped him? Somehow that remained invisible to him. J.K. Rowling offers subtle hints that Voldemort was blind to certain forms of magic. In Half-Blood Prince, Dumbledore remarks, "Voldemort's mistake, Harry, Voldemort's mistake. The real reason why he failed to kill you was that he overlooked a powerful magic, older than any he knows." He was referring to Lily's sacrificial protection, but the theme echoes further. Voldemort's arrogance blinded him to anything he did not create. He believed only in deliberate acts. An accidental Horcrux would be beneath his notice. Unthinkable. In his mind it wasn't possible, and if it wasn't possible, then it simply wasn't. But there is more. Voldemort had already torn his soul to pieces. The process of creating Horcruxes is violent, unholy. Each division rips the soul apart further, and Voldemort had done it 6 times before the night at Godric's Hollow. When he tried to kill Harry, his soul was so unstable that the final blow caused it to split again, involuntarily. The fragment that entered Harry did so not through spellcraft, but desperation. In the Deathly Hallows, Dumbledore says plainly, "The fragment of soul that was in Harry was not there by choice. It was a fluke, an accident." And still the question lingers. Why didn't Voldemort feel the fluke? Magic in Rowling's world often reflects emotion and belief. Voldemort did not feel the Horcrux in Harry because he could not believe such a thing could happen. He believed himself the master of death, of life, of soul manipulation. The idea that magic could act independently of his will was intolerable to his worldview. Dumbledore often emphasized that Voldemort misunderstood love, loyalty, and even fear. His knowledge of magic was deep but not complete. He did not understand house elf magic. He did not grasp the loyalty of wands. He certainly did not believe that a soul fragment could reside in a living being unless placed there by design. And so Harry lived on with a piece of Voldemort inside him, an echo that haunted him, caused him pain, and connected him to the man he hated. It was that connection that should have betrayed the secret. Harry saw into Voldemort's mind. He felt his rage, his triumph, even his cruelty. Why did Voldemort not feel Harry in return? The connection was described as one-sided, like a closed door with a peephole. Voldemort, in his efforts to shield his mind from Dumbledore's influence, began training himself in occlumency. He closed himself off. Perhaps he closed the one path that would have revealed the truth. Snape's occlumency lessons with Harry in Order of the Phoenix give us further clues. The mind, we are told, can be shielded. Thoughts can be hidden, emotions masked. But Harry had no such training until late in the series. His soul was open, unguarded, exposed to Voldemort. And still Voldemort never noticed. He was focused on conquest, not reflection. He sought elder wands and prophecies, not self-awareness. And so the fragment stayed quiet, buried, undisturbed. Only once did Voldemort come close to realizing the truth, and he drew the wrong conclusion. In Deathly Hallows, during the final battle at Hogwarts, he kills Harry and is stunned when the boy survives. In the forest, as he and Narcissa Malfoy examine Harry's dead body, Voldemort senses something has gone wrong. He doesn't understand it, but the Horcrux inside Harry has been destroyed. Harry, however, is not truly dead, thanks to the same blood Voldemort used to return to life. As Dumbledore later explains, "He took your blood, and in doing so, he tethered you to life." Voldemort, in his arrogance, ensured Harry's survival, and in doing so, lost the only piece of his soul he never meant to make. Even Nagini, the only living Horcrux Voldemort deliberately created, was treated differently. Voldemort protected her with enchantments and kept her close, but he did not exhibit the same behavior toward Harry. He hunted him, feared him, tortured him. He did not feel love or kinship or even magical familiarity. Perhaps the fragment in Harry was too passive. It did not speak to him. It did not scream as the locket later did when threatened. It was dormant, muted by Harry's own nature, his courage, and the love that protected him. One must also consider the philosophical implications. Voldemort believed in objects, in anchors. He put his soul in a ring, a diary, a cup. He believed in permanence. Harry, as a Horcrux, defied all of that. He was mortal. He was changing. He was unpredictable. Voldemort feared death above all things. To place a part of himself into a boy, a living creature who could bleed and feel and love, that was a betrayal of his entire ideology. If he had known, he would have killed Harry not just for revenge, but out of horror. But he didn't know, because Voldemort's genius had a fatal flaw. He underestimated the soul. He saw it as a commodity, a thing to be divided and used. He did not understand that souls are not meant to be split. He did not understand that the soul, like magic itself, has its own will. And so when his soul shattered one final time, it sought refuge without permission. It embedded itself into the boy who had just been saved by love, and Voldemort, in all his brilliance, never noticed. Dumbledore, of course, did. He suspected the truth long before he revealed it to Harry. In Half-Blood Prince, he begins to unravel the mystery. By Deathly Hallows, the truth is clear. He says, "You were the seventh Horcrux, Harry, the Horcrux he never meant to make." But he waited to tell Harry until the moment was right, when Harry was strong enough to hear it. Voldemort never waited, never listened. He charged forward, blind to the soul inside his enemy. In the end, it was that blindness that undid him. The boy who lived had carried within him the final weakness of the Dark Lord, and Voldemort, obsessed with immortality, never realized that his last, most vulnerable fragment beat within the heart of the child he could not kill.